topic, when we put the posters out and sent them out in the emails, his was the only one that got specific attention. They said they liked the 5-minute forum, and they liked the idea of having a party, but when it came to the topics, his was the only topic where people actually said, oh, this is great, we've got somebody who remembers Pearl Harbor Day, we've got somebody who has memories of Pearl Harbor Day. And so, because of that, we decided to give Paul a couple extra minutes instead of trying to track him in to the 5-minute thing.
Did you get that? Yeah, I got it.
Anywhere.
Don't start until he speaks, okay?
Yes. Oh.
This is Dad's hat. United States Army Air Corps, 1941. Stationed at Wickham Field, Honolulu, Hawaii. That is to say, on the southwest side of the island. But he had come in on the early morning hours of December 7th to work at the Naval Motor Pool. They had borrowed him to come over, and his specialty was transmissions, and to put some transmissions into some of the jitneys that were sitting there just on the southwest side of Pearl Harbor, just across from the row of ships that were about to be bombed. And when this occurred, Dad had been up all night and working on these. Can you hear me back there? Are you awake? Okay. So, in the process of seeing the sunlight begin to come through the bay doors, he thought he heard the roar of aircraft coming from the distance. And in the process of hearing that roar of aircraft, he suddenly was knocked off his feet by a shockwave. And the bombs began to fall and began to find their targets. And men began to die. And ships began to sink. My father, being the kind of old world country boy that he was very ingenious and knew how to take care of stuff. And one of the first things he realized was he didn't have a truck that was ready to roll to at least go to provide some kind of aid and assistance, whatever he could do. He just put the transmission into a big six-wheeler, but he realized that he hadn't reconnected all of the levers to make the transmission work. So he jammed a big, huge wrench down inside the transmission, locked it into place, threw it into reverse, and it worked. Pulled out into the runway area of that side walkway. I don't know if you've ever been there before, but there is a big, wide walkway that they had actually used as a runway for small aircraft during the World War II period, and began to roll up toward where all of the sailors were either being fished out of the water or swimming up out of the water, some of them severely burned, some of them horribly injured, and began to load them into the back of the jitney. And in the process of that, more vehicles and help began to arrive, and more bombs were falling, and more men were dying, and more ships were sinking. And he drove the jitney on up to the Kamehameha Hospital, up on the hill overlooking the harbor, and unloaded and began to go back again, using that wrench stuck inside the transmission to shift the vehicle, and made 3 trips before all was pretty much settled out of place or unable to move anymore. The impact on my father was life-changing. One of the things that he shared many years later, and certainly during the beginnings of the Korean conflict, I still remember sitting around the dinner table and listening to Dad talk. And then the beginning of the Israeli war in '56, some of you are old enough to remember all of this, and began to talk about people, and talk about loss of life, and talk about injury. And saying how important it was to be sensitive and aware of life around you, and participating with people, and helping people. And he witnessed that in all my life growing up. And so Dad's story of Pearl Harbor, the impact alone upon him, much less upon the rest of us, his children, and upon his wife. So Robert Wayne was a changed man because of Pearl Harbor, although not injured, participating. and had that effect upon the rest of us. Yes, this is my mother's bonnet. About the time that the bombs were going off at Pearl Harbor, my mother was toting water across the street from the old homestead farm place where she was living with my parents, with my father's parents. And in the toting of the water, her process became one of an issue related to life-saving, because the little sharecropper and his wife were about to have a baby. And this baby was being born with the help of no one but my mother's presence. The rest of the families were all out working, didn't know that in fact this baby was coming. So my mother had boiled a bunch of water and had cleaned everything and prepared everything, and the baby came. And as my mother stood there prepared to receive the baby coming out of the womb, she noticed that the head was coming out just black as night, purplishly blue. And she realized from her experience just a few months before that the umbilical cord was wrapped around the baby's neck. She had seen it happen to a calf that she had helped my grandfather birth just a few months before, and she instantly knew what to do and began to unwrap the umbilical cord and free the baby and resuscitate the baby and turn it back to life. That experience for her, giving life, participating in that process, was not unlike my father's on the very same day at very nearly the same hour that he was participating in saving lives at Pearl Harbor. A coincidence? I think not. I think it is a part of our life as we do these things to share together with the people that are around us. We are here to serve. And so, whether it's mom, whether it's dad, whether it's me or whether it's you, our job is to, in my opinion, provide service and care for the world that's around us. My father would give a car when I was 7 years old, I remember it well, to a family that lived up in the country that didn't have any way to travel, any way to get to town. The horses would occasionally still work in the 50s, but nevertheless, he had two, so he didn't want to know. I still have memories of my mother feeding the hungry and the poor that would come down the road to the farm. I still have memories of my mother tending to the sick of those that would work around the farms and in the orchards. And good people, this was even our Mexican people in the Bracero program. Some of you old enough to remember the Bracero program? When they could legally come across. Something wrong with our government today, they can't even solve that simple little problem. Bring them in legally, let them work, feed them, care for them, let them help us, and then send them home. Why not? Can I highlight a little bit of my political feelings about such things? But to sum this up, my expectation, I hope it's your expectation, is to serve those who are in need, to participate with those in the world around us who have cares and woes and difficulty. My job, even in retail, as a retail merchant, is to serve the public, to serve my community, to participate in, I hope, teaching and developing young people. And for those of you that have been around me and seen me in that public arena, understand what that's all about. The young people may be reactive, the young people may be instinctively somewhere else in this world, but they will respond to you and to respond to me if we just care enough to bring on this next generation. Can we do it? I believe we can. Thank you.
Is he good or what?
Yes.
And he actually lives the life that he was talking about here. He is exactly that kind of person.
Pineapple.
He's a Navy veteran, full term, and he has knowledge and love of the forests and the woods. And he's going to be talking to us today on Senator Wyden's new proposed bill for us over here in Western Oregon and the results for Coos County. Don?
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate coming and visiting with you. I see a lot of old friends, some new people I don't know. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I would like to start this. I'm going to be talking about specifically, it might be different than this, but today is Pearl Harbor Day. I'm one of the few probably that is amongst us. I was in the first grade at Bunker Hill, December 7th, 1941. So I have been here. I lived through World War II. My father served in World War II. It inspired me to make the military my career, and that's what I did. I served in Korea and Vietnam. So anyway, I'm glad to see people recognize what this country was like back in World War II. It's important. I'll give you a little thing, and I'm sure it's surprising to see it now that December the 7th was on a Sunday. I lived, at that time they called Sleepy Hollow, which is just south of Bunker Hill, where it is now. And there was a store there, and all the people came there. All the men came there, they had guns, they had food, they were ready to go to war. I mean, it was not this kind of thing, are you going to call me up, or this or that. They were there to protect us. I'd like to see that happen today. Anyway, so I'll leave that one there, and I'll change the whole subject, and we'll talk about a little bit about Senator Wyden, bill that he brought for us about ONC lands and Coos Bay Wagon Road. I'm particularly involved with the Coos Bay Wagon Road. I have been, and it's an important part of our tax structure that comes into this county, and it's been a problem for quite some time. Now, I'll brief this a little bit to the fact that, as we all probably know, that the timber industry went down. The federal government was going to give us a welfare check supposedly to make us survive. It hasn't worked for 30 years, and so now Representative DeFazio decided to put a bill to the House. Senator Wyden didn't like it, I don't think, so he put his own bill forward, and it kind of came down to this. The environmental community did not like the Representative's DeFazio's bill. The timber industry did. Senator Wyden's bill, neither one of them liked it. So here's where we're at with this. To give you an idea a little bit, the Coos Bay Wagon Road, I won't get into the big history of it because it's a short length of time, but I'll just say to this that there's 60,000 acres in Coos County that's supposed to be paying the taxes the same as private people do. If that's the case, we'd be all rich, but it don't work that way. Senator Wyden wants to tie the Coos Bay Wagon Road lands, the 60,000 acres, into the ONC bill, which means Coos County loses quite a bit over the whole thing. Our commissioners at the time, they're waiting to discuss this again with Senator Wyden, what they're going to come with. Probably in a week or two, they're going to have a work session and talk about it. And I would recommend you do talk to your commissioners about what are you going to do about it. Some at this time, they're kind of threw their hands up, says we can't do anything. Some said, well, we are going to try to. But if the bill goes through as Senator Wyden has proposed, there'll be less jobs, less money, not good all the way around. So that, I'm going to cut this a little short for you without going in too far, because it's long and lengthy, but the basic situation of the bills at this time are not good. Not for Coos County. This might be good for somebody, but not Coos County. So I thank you again for it, and I appreciate being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. He is in encapsulated in a few words a very, very, very deep, detailed process and problem we have ongoing here in this county. He has suggested to the commissioners at times a solution they might pursue, and they never have chosen to do so, and that is sending a bill to the federal government for monies that should be paid to Coos County, going back to, what year was that done, when they put that act in, 1939?
1919 and 1939.
Okay. Anyway, if you have any questions, you'll find nobody in this county who knows more about timber and the Coos Bay Wagon Road than Don Gurney. Thank you so much, Don.
Thank you.
I'm having a little trouble seeing with the glare. Has Bo Allen made it here yet? Okay. Our next speaker is going to be Sharon Waterman. Sharon's a rancher here in the county. She's a little gimped up now, but she'll get over it.
Throughout the United States that won this honor. So we're going to Texas and American Farm Bureau and doing a booth, and so it's kind of fun. I passed around how I got involved in this was like 3 years ago, I think it was, after doing a public records request. I found there was a grant that was written by the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, the ODF&W, and the Nature Conservancy. And I have a couple maps that were part of this grant application. And I had read part of it when I got home that night from Salem, but I didn't get all the way through it. And the next day I had to go pick up my grandson at school. And I took it with me while I was sitting in the parking lot waiting for school to adjourn. And needless to say, it's very interesting to find your name in a grant that you didn't even know existed that had been written a year prior to that. And it's gone all the way to national. U.S., it was a national U.S. coastal wetlands grant. So anyway, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is, as you know, the Coquille Valley, there's approximately, depending on what figures you want to call, approximately 17,000 acres that has been drained and diked and tide gates for agriculture land. And it is a viable economic part of our community. So one of the things that I found out when I looked at this grant is the first picture you'll see, the whole Coquille Valley is a conservation opportunity area. Now what does that mean to you? That means that ODF&W, as well as other environmental groups and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, think that it would be really nice to get the Coquille Valley back to the way it used to be. You know, those of you who are abandoned marsh people, you know, here we've got the new 400-acre wetland on the old dairy farm that Philpott had. And what do you have? You have mosquitoes. So, and of course that will never happen in Coquille. Never, never, never happen in Coquille. That's what we're told. That's what we're told. Yeah. So anyway, then the second map that was in that grant is the one underneath it, and it shows 3 pieces of property that were targeted for acquisition in this grant. One of them, the little red one, is a low property. The black one was Roseburg Resources property. The low property was owned by Band Biota. The Roseburg Resources property was purchased by Band Biota before the land trade. And then there's the other piece that is this Winter Lake piece, which also was purchased by Band Biota. And those 2 pieces, the Winter Lake piece and the Roseburg Resources piece, were used as trading stock for the Eel Lake, which many of you heard that went on earlier. So now, who's involved in all of this? It gets to be kind of a menagerie of people when you start looking. We have the Vanna Marsh, which is U.S. Fish and Wildlife. But I don't know if you know or not, but $900,000 of your OWEB, your Oregon Water Enhancement Board money, also went into this federal project. It wasn't just all federal money. There were state monies too, plus all the amount of staff time and stuff that ODF&W has put into this project. Now the other parts, the Winter Lake, the Beaver Slough, that's all Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Those properties are owned by Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they're targeted for restoration. There's one other piece that's the China Camp Gun Club that is also going to be a conservation easement. So there's an additional 120 acres to the Winter Lake Park that will be a wetland. So what does this do for Coos County when we're having our productive ag lands taken out of production and put into, wetlands? It takes a whole section of the economy out. I also gave you some ideas of partners that are involved in this: the Nature Conservancy, Abandoned Biota, Beaver Slough Drainage District, ODF&W, and there's a multitude of nonprofits that are getting their money. In fact, I even found, when I went on Pacific Power's website, you can donate some money through the energy program. In 2010, some of that money went into this project. So anyway, that at least gives you a quick overview, and it is continuing. The project is moving forward.
Thank you, Sharon. Sharon could talk for 3 hours without drawing breath on this topic. Yeah. Well, Bo isn't here, is he? Would you like a couple more minutes?
It doesn't make any difference.
Well, I think she said no, Jenny. That was a good thought. Well, it's all right to mention that I own the Blue Heron, and he does. A very successful restaurant here in the Bay Area. But he also said, but you can say that I have another life, and I am a critic and an investigator of the economic development racket. And he is. I also want to mention that he has written the book on the subject, literally. Do you have a copy of it, Win? Do you have one you can hold up so people can see it? Okay, it's called The Job Messiahs. It's in the 2nd edition already, and if you wonder why the economic structure of this area is so poor, and why it continues to remain poor no matter what happens, no matter what's brought forward, no matter how they vote, no matter which council says what about who, the book to read is Wim's book, because he chronicles 40 years of mismanagement of economic development. Wim, come on up.
I watched somebody else put on a hat here. This is the one that I wore this morning. And you see what it's come to with all this global warming. Which brings me to my topic. You want to know how to say my name? It's Wim de Vriend. I don't have any trouble with it. I had it all my life, though. And, so often in life, and especially in politics, you think you're buying one thing, but what you end up with is something quite different. And I would say that the odds are getting greater that that's going to apply to global warming too. But aside from that, we can think of all sorts of events in politics, bills that were sold to the people. For example, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. And we're finding out that there's no patient protection, and certainly it's not affordable. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Well, recovery hasn't really happened, and the investment only applies, the term only applies if you believe that investment is government throwing away money on boondocks. And then finally, there are many more examples along this line, but in this area we have specialized for a long time in creating economic development agencies, because way back in the 1970s it was recognized that the economy was going to change, and so people wanted something done about it, and they had the idea that if you simply create an agency and you hire experts, well-paid experts, and they will go out and recruit new industries for you. And so even if the lumber bills go down, which they did, why, we'll have new factories with different names over the gates, and life will go on as it had before with good wages, great benefits, and so on. Although I think in many ways the golden days of Coos Bay were somewhat exaggerated, but that's beside the point. And that was the idea. So it was in the early 70s when this whole trend for economic development agencies started. The state of Oregon created a statewide economic development agency in 1973. And in a way they were sort of late because the state of Michigan was the very first one in the nation to create one. Well, and they've kept on creating more and more in Michigan, all over the place. Well, if you've kept up on the news from Michigan, they haven't done too well. And you can actually make a good case that the more economic development agencies you get, the less economic development occurs, except for the people who work for the agencies. Here in about 1975, a bunch of activists decided that the Port of Coos Bay had to become the leader, the economic leader for Coos County, or at least for the Port District. And and it could no longer be just the agency that it had been, which mainly involved making sure that the harbor got dredged, so that the lumber mills could ship out their products. Well, at that point, the former manager of the port retired, and they hired a new one, sort of a brassy character, and paid him twice the money, and he created several financial disasters. Because what economic development seems to mean to these people is to go way out on a limb, throw a lot of money at some notion, a wild notion, that a private investor, generally speaking, if they had any sense, wouldn't even touch. And so they go out, and usually they're counting on some private investor stepping in once they pay for this boondoggle. Well, that never happens, very rarely. And so we ended up with, the T-Dock on the North Spit, with vacant fish plants in Charleston, and it went on and on like that, because then these people, the economic developers, they have a kind of shelf life, and then after a few years they kind of put their finger to the wind and they go on to the next job, leaving all this wreckage behind them. And the opinion leaders, which traditionally included not only organizations like the Chamber of Commerce and so forth, the Rotary Club, but also the local paper, they would sit around saying, yeah, well, you know, yeah, we didn't see the new jobs appear yet, but oh, it's going to happen. You just wait and see. And he did a pretty good job. And then they hired the next guy, had more money yet, and the same thing repeats itself. In about 1990, we had quite a controversy in this town about a pulp mill that supposedly somebody wanted to build on the North Spit. And of course, a lot of the manias for development, practically all of them, were to happen on the North Spit, which didn't sit well with local people who kind of like the fresh air and so on. But the reality of it was that no matter who was excited about this thing, whether it was the Chamber of Commerce or the port, or people who really didn't want their lives ruined, you know, that distracted me. I was headed for something. But the reality, the underlying reality was invariably that the project was a scam by some promoters who wanted to make a quick buck, or it was never serious, because people in Coos Bay are stupid enough to believe that this area can be an industrial center and a world harbor. After all these years, they are dumb enough to believe that. So therefore, a large company can come here and say, yeah, well, we want to expand, and we'd like to see what kind of tax benefits we can get here, and what kind of subsidies and so on. How about a little corporate welfare? And so then everybody goes all out, creating enterprise zones and urban renewal and tax exemptions and subsidies for this and that and the other thing. And then they go to some other place far away from here where they really are interested in going, and they'll say, well, this is what they're offering in Coos Bay. Can you do any better? And this has happened over and over and over again. And All of this is in my book called The Job Messiahs, because all these people, the economic developers, they present themselves as our saviors that will create jobs for us. And they do create jobs for themselves, as I said. I spent about 20 years on this book, starting in about 1990, 1991. And sometimes I would let it slip a bit because, you know, this is mostly of local interest, although I think this kind of garbage is going on all over the country. I know it has. But it's also very well documented. And it covers from about 1975 to the present, all the various projects that have happened. And I tried to make it very entertaining, so that it's lavishly illustrated. Just about every page has a picture or something else on it that entertains. Some of it is actually pretty funny, but there's a lot of material in it, no question about it. But if anybody wants to know something about what has happened, what the history of all this has been, check it out. And I've had several people, much to my pleasure, mention that my article that appeared in the Sentinel just this week. Yes, that is connected also. Now, the price for this book is $35, and but I'll sweeten the pie for you. Actually, at $35, if I make a penny on every hour that I spend doing this, I'll be lucky. But if you buy the book, I will throw in another book I published, and it's called Odd Customers. And it's a mixture of funny customer stories at my restaurant and memories from World War II. Now, I was not old enough to be aware of Pearl Harbor, just a few months at the time. But growing up in Europe, I lived with the aftermath and all the scary things that happened that were told about and so on and so forth. So it's always fascinated me. And if you buy The Job Messiahs, you'll get this one for free. We'll throw that in. Right, that was my pitch. Thank you for giving me the extra time.
Speaker is Tom McCurgan, and he's saying you gave me too much praise, and I say no, I didn't, because if Tom hadn't said what he said, we wouldn't be here today. It's that simple. Tom is with Oath Keepers, and he's on a mission. He has passion. He is tired of people, you know, flaunting the law, laughing at the Constitution, and variously disrupting your lives for their benefit. Tom, come on.
Hello everybody, Merry Christmas. Thank you all for coming out today. I appreciate that. Ronnie and Jay have really worked hard to get this going, and having all you folks here, it makes it even much nicer, so thank you. Can you hear me okay back there?
Yeah, sure.
I'm a little soft-spoken, but I just wanted to, before he dings me, I wanted to say a couple of things. I'm the Southern Oregon coordinator for Oath Keepers. I cover 12 counties in the state and south. And Jeff Ford handles the north area, Portland and all that liberal area. So right now we're building up chapters in all of the counties. We're going to be building one here in Coos County and Curry County in January. So I'm not sure exactly when this one will be notified. We'll put something in the paper on it, and we'll announce it on the Jubilee show where it's going to be and when. But I'm working with Rob Taylor, the Coos County Watchdog, and we're doing right now, of course, as you know, Oath Keepers, we reach, teach, and inspire others to follow their oath to the Constitution. And not only that, but the Oregon Constitution, which is even more stringent than the U.S. So, under Article 6, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution, Article 15, Section 3 of the Oregon Constitution is the oath of office. And it's really a win-win situation, because let's say if we, like in Josephine County, we presented a proclamation that had the Josephine County Commissioners reaffirm their oath of office, and it's going to happen in January. After that, we're going to test them. We're going to slide in there with the anti-NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, and we're going to ask them to fight it, just like we did in Coos County. So if they say, no, we're not going to do that, that's telling me they're not honoring their oath to the Constitution. So if you actively do not fight against unconstitutional acts, you're basically allowing it. And that's what the city of Coos Bay did when they refused to acknowledge our resolution, and they already even read it. When you guys hear about when we're going to Coos Bay, if you can show up there and give some support and talk to the commission, the county, city councilors, and say, hey, we're behind this, we want it stopped, and we don't want your police officers enforcing unconstitutional laws. And the city just doesn't seem to understand that. So we're beginning with a referendum initiative to put our anti-NDAA resolution on the ballot. Seeing as they won't vote for it, we're going to let the people do it. And at the same time, we're going to be trying to clear out that nest of elected officials who are not following their oath to the Constitution. They think it's not a local issue. How many in here think that your rights is a local issue? How many think it is? Exactly. It is a local issue. It is a local issue because what they do in DC affects us down here. Everything. Everything. So when they violate their oath, then the ones here, they take their training and instruction from Portland and Salem, DC, and all that. Well, take your resolution to the state. Take it to the Congress. They want us to take this resolution back to the people who created the monster and stuff it back in the box. Ain't going to happen. So we're losing all of our rights unless we fight for them. And the way to do that is get people to honor their oath. And we're doing it publicly. You've probably seen some of the stuff in the paper that we've written up and Rob's written up. And Rob is going to be putting some information on CoosCountyWatchdog.com, and where you can go there and type in, look for the NDAA button up there on the top left, and you can contribute there as well. And anyone who'd like to help us gather signatures, etc., go there and sign up on Rob's website to say, yeah, I'll get signatures for you. I'll stand out at the post office and catch all these city voters and get this thing on the ballot where we need to. We certainly do. Without liberty and without this, nothing matters. I don't care if they got paved roads or potted holes, or none of that stuff matters. What their main job is, their priority is to ensure that our rights are protected above all, and then everything else comes after that. So if we want to, right now our country is going to hell. It's not a secret. There's plans to it. They're working on an agenda. I mean, if you look at Agenda 21 and ICLEI, all of these local issues, they're all coming from somewhere, and it's not us. So we're the ones that have to deal with it here. The land issue, the marsh, every federal problem that we've got, it stems from there. And our representatives, I won't mention a name, but I did speak to a state representative through email, asking them to honor and support a resolution that would rid us of the areas in the NDAA that we need to get rid of that apply to American citizens. And he said, if you notice the word national, because I'm a state rep, this is federal. He goes, it's their job to do it. And federal law trumps state law. Do you think your rights are trumped by any law? No. God gave us those rights. The Constitution guarantees it. Okay? So, for a man to say that to me, he's saying, number one, I'm not going to honor my oath. Number two, it's a federal issue, it's not a local issue. So, what do we do? What do you folks think? It's, of course, a local issue. So anyway, enough of that. In January, after the holidays, in January, we're going to pick it back up, and we're going to be looking for some help. So, like I said, without this resolution, the NDAA, it's not, I mean, nothing else matters. So, anyway, we appreciate that, and if there's anything you guys need information on, you can get it off of Rob's website or contact me, and we'll get you set up. So thank you all very much. Thanks for coming today.
Jim Maitland. Where are you, Jim? I saw you. There you are. Thank you. Welcome, by the way. Jim, help me get this right, Jim. Jim, one is a landowner outside of Myrtle Point, He's been around, he's been active for a long time. He's commissioner for the board of Coquille River. Did I get that right? Okay. And the board of Coquille River owns the Powers Airport. And at this point in time, Jim Maitland is the Powers Airport manager, and the Powers Airport is his topic of discussion. Jim?
Will you hold that cord around so that we get a little real estate? It's around that. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Is it on or off?
It's on.
It's on. Good afternoon. Thanks for listening. This is going to be about economic development, I'm sorry to say. Powers Airport, I'll give you a little background. Powers Airport was started in January 1, 1960 by local people who had airplanes and wanted someplace to fly. It stayed that way until about 1970, when the owners of the land sold the property to the state of Oregon, who at the time was buying small airports around the state. In 1997, the state of Oregon deeded the airport to the Port of Coquille River. I became a commissioner last July. The airport since 1960 has had absolutely no utilities at all put in. There's no water, there's no electricity, there's no toilets. And I started getting interested in it, and all of a sudden I was made the man. Go get it. May do something. So I started, and we put together a grant for the Connect Oregon first. Little did I know it would be $180 million or something like that, trying to get $42 million from ODOT. By the way, Maitland, Jim Maitland's my name, and my wife and I live on the south fork of the Coquille River. We have a cattle ranch. That's one of the reasons we're late. And the people that I'm dealing with in Powers, I've known them for 37 years, and so I've got a good camaraderie and a lot of good help getting this going. If we get the grant, we will be able to have local contractors do the electrical work, do the water. We're going to use City of Powers water. That means it has to come across a bridge, which is the only way into the airport, across the river. I attended a meeting, a council meeting last month, and the mayor said, well, what's the problem with the water down there? And I said, well, it's an 1.5-inch steel line that's been in there for at least 50 years. There's 5 people on it, and they're all complaining about rusty water. We need a 3-inch line down to the bridge. So they talked about it for about 5 minutes, and the mayor finally said, weren't we supposed to change that line on the last grant we got? And they said, yeah, but we didn't have enough money at the end. We ran out of time. He said, well, we're not going to run out of time this time. We're going to put a new 3-inch line all the way down to the bridge for Jim Maitland's airport. So that was a start. And then I went to the Forest Service, and I went there for a letter from them, like I did to the City of Powers Council, to put in with the grant. And before I left, I've got the promise of one toilet that they have sitting down at what they call the Cedar Bark House, which is about 6 or 7 miles down from Powers. And it'll be coming up for surplus pretty soon, and we're going to get it. So that's the beginning. It's one of those expensive, like $12,000 or $15,000 toilets. Yeah, no kidding. That's what they cost. They make them in Roseburg. Out of concrete, yeah, beautiful. We've got 3 of them on our grant. But anyway, that was a good rapport with the Forest Service because they use the airport as a heliport when there's fires in the district. There was one this summer, they used it for about a month and a half. And then when they pulled out, they didn't cancel the 10 toilets over there, so we had them for the summer. It made a big difference. Because we've got a lot of people flying into Powers. A lot of people. They've given up on Bandon because of the fog and the cold. So they just put their GPS on Powers and fly right in. We've got 2,500-foot turf strip. And we have one hangar. And Albert Powers brings his twin in every month to check up on his ranch. And he said that if we get the toilets, because he belongs to what they call the 80s Club, there's 1,500 members, they're all 80 or over, and they're all still flying. And he said, if you get us toilets, because we really do need toilets, we'll bring people in. We've got photographs of people just show up, and there'll be over 172 cents to sit there, and a little blue tent. It's hard to tell when they're in the pictures. And they just fly in and set up their tent. And there's places for them, but there's no utilities. It's amazing. It's gone that from 60 to this year without any utilities. They're beautiful. And people, when they first come in, say, it's a diamond in the rough. It's beautiful. It is. And not only, that's not the only good thing about Powers. Powers has got 3 main attractions. The first one is north of Powers, which is the park. The Powers County Park is one of the nicest parks I've been in. I used to patrol it when I was a police officer there. It's really a neat place, clean, well taken care of, with a huge mill pond that's now a pond for the kids to fish in. Unfortunately, some of the kids are on Social Security to fish in it, but that doesn't make much difference. Then we have Powers itself, which is quaint, and it's going to get fixed up, I hope. And then we have south of Powers, 3 of the nicest campgrounds you're ever going to stay in, belonging to the Forest Service. So it's quite a destination. What else is there? Already talked about the grant. Powers, the manager, commissioner, oh my, I'm very sorry about this, Annie.
This is your second green card.
Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'm going to be talking on the Voice of the Voters Home Rule Charter that we ran last year in 2012. We are almost for sure going to bring it back in 2014. And thank you very much, guys. It's looking really, really good. For those who weren't with the program last year, a home rule charter is a constitution that's passed at the county level, and it creates enforceable contracts. Underline the word enforceable contracts between you and your elected officials. Our charter is called Voice of the Voters, and the entire gist of this charter, the entire focus, is to return to the voters their voice and their place at the table. Last year, when the dust finally settled and not reported very well by the papers, if reported at all, it turns out that the charter, when we only had 5 months to run it, and we were under a tremendous time constraint last year to get it on the ballot to see if we could get it passed, because we knew full well what the commissioners were doing and what they were going to continue doing. And when it was done, we had gotten 6,520 votes. That is a remarkable number of votes to get for something that's as major as a county charter in as little time as we had, which was 5 months. Can we do it? And I'm going to tell you, this thing is so simple. It is so doable. Listen to the numbers. I said this in October, I'm saying it in December, and I will say it every month until we win November 4th. If every single one of the 6,520 people who voted for the charter gets exactly one other person to vote for it. That's it. We're not talking 5, 10, 50. If each one who voted for it gets one more person to vote for it, it passes no matter how many people are voting at that election. So this is simple. This is really doable. I mean, you've got your friends, your family, your work people, you know, can you get one? I'm betting you can. The commissioners have been paying a little bit of attention to the charter, not because they endorsed the charter, nor would they ever, but because they realize how many people voted for it and that people are kind of watching them. And so one of the things they did, which is almost too funny, in the charter was a cost of living allowance for the county courthouse workers. And the commissioners have gone ahead and passed that. It was going to automatically pass with the charter, and then it was going to go up to a vote, you know, every few years after that. Well, the most unpopular item in the charter, with no exceptions, the most unpopular thing was this cost of living allowance. But the commissioners didn't know that. We know that because we listened to you. We got, yeah. Why should they get a raise? We're not getting a raise. We don't have jobs. They already get paid too much, etc., etc. You made your voice very, very clear. But they didn't hear you. So they went ahead and gave the cost of living allowance, you know, taking it just right out of the charter. So it's really kind of funny. We have some new contact information, and we've had some fun with it. We have a website up. It is under construction, so please bear with us. Mary Gentry's putting it up. We know nothing about constructing websites. It does, however, have the charter there, and it has the email you can contact us with. It is called argvoice.com. That's ARRRGVOICE, argvoice.com. Arg for us, voice for voice of the voters. We have a new email, and we have had a lot of fun with this email title. It is arg, A-R-R-R-G, arg, at agitatus.com. Agitatus.com. It comes from the Latin. And what it translates out nicely to be, agitatus.com, is let us agitate, but calmly. And it is meant to rile the powers that be, and as well it will. They will be, they're already chewing on the word "ar," and thank you, by the way, Wim, for using this phonetically similar word in your article in the Sentinel. You did, with spaces in between and a dash on both sides. Arg! So we appreciate the plug, intended or otherwise. We are looking actively for input on the charter. Last year we didn't have time. We barely had time to get it filed, to get the signatures, to get it on the ballot. This year we are going to reorganize the charter. Some things are going by the wayside. That COLA was going to be one of them. And some things are going to be added, things are going to be tweaked. It's going to be a smoother charter when we get done with it this time. And we are actively soliciting your input. Remember, it all has to pass the attorney. If the attorney says it's going to stick the charter, which he did with 2 of my things, it goes. It just leaves. That's it. Because the charter is the important thing, and you can take my feelings and set them aside, which I had to do. It hurt. But we want your opinions. When you go onto the website, and by the way, we have plenty of charters up here. We have hard copies, and on each charter is our contact information. We also have business cards, but on the charters themselves, we have a label with, you know, arg@agitatus.com and argvoice.com and our post office box address. But we want you to look at things, because we know that from the meetings last year when we couldn't do anything about it. Oh, am I stuck with a timer too? Thanks a lot, Teddy. Anyway, go ahead and look at it. We know from what you said at the meetings that you had issues, but there was nothing we could do about it. We could hear you, and some of those things are going to be addressed. But go out on pick up the charter here, whatever, the second page is an index. You know, go down, see what interests you. It might be predator control. It might be how you're going to enforce this to keep the commissioners in order. That is the strongest section in the entire charter. I think it's 25 currently. We want your input on this, especially for those of you who have...
I'm really delighted to be here today and to see faces of people who really care about this country. Now, on the bankrupting of Coos County, of course, it is not just our county, it is the whole country. But let's concentrate for the moment on Coos County, because you started at home and you got a stable base and then you can stretch out. That doesn't mean I think you should ignore the feds in the state, because I don't either. But our power base can be here to a great extent. Now, there's a question on the bankrupting of our county, and most of us know it's in bankruptcy almost. Is it deliberate? Is it greed? Or is it just plain stupidity? I think it's all of the above, yes. And the thing is, there are so many people that don't know what is being done to us in the name of, you should be guilty. Don't you want to give all your money to someone else? Don't you want to give the rest of your land to Snowy Plover? Disregarding the fact it already has plenty of land. Don't you want to give your land over to the wolves? You're supposed to feel guilty if you don't. This is one of the ways that they control the people. Make them feel guilty. Now, just as an example of what all they've taken, John Shank did a report, and I think at this point it's probably a couple years old, but since 1859, the federal government alone has, in Coos County, not Oregon, but Coos County, 18,465.75 acres. Those acres are not giving you any property tax, they aren't giving you anything, unless you want to look at the abandoned marsh, and it's getting you mosquitoes. I remember not very long ago when they told us that West Nile virus, you know, is going to kill you. You must come get your shots. It's going to kill you. Now what do? They create a swamp of mosquitoes. I understand from someone who's familiar that those mosquitoes can fly 30 miles. So if they fly 30 miles and they lay their eggs, and there's another 30 miles, I think you can figure the math. But it's all the exemptions that they give certain people that they choose, and I'm referring to our governments. All the way from the county, the state, the feds. What exemptions do they give? They give them special tax exemptions. Take ORC, Oregon Resources, for instance. An Australian-based bank was running them. Actually, they're more international, but they gave them tax-exempt status because they're going to produce all these jobs for you. Oh my goodness, everybody, prosperity was just around the corner. Just give them the money, give them the contracts. We told them what was going to happen last time when they were giving them a contract that was open-ended, so when they went into bankruptcy, they could sell it to anyone they wanted. And guess what? 3 days later, they declared that they couldn't fulfill it. They had to drop all of their employees. This goes on constantly, the giving of our money to these different people that are supposed to save the county. And, let's see, then there's the railroad. I don't know if you noticed, but the railroad basically just is for about one company. And I came into town a couple of days ago, and there it was, the rails just out of Coos Bay. They were underwater a couple of feet. I mean, they've done a marvelous job with our money there too, giving it away to something that is really beneficial. Have you felt any impact from it? Do you know that we still owe a great deal of money on the original gas pipeline? You're still paying for it because it was going to give us, I don't remember, something like 1,700 jobs in this county. Have you seen those jobs? Again, they're giving away our money. Not only that, they're taking private people's land to do it. Of course, they're not reducing their property taxes any, but you realize what's going to happen when they flood that Cook Hill Valley? It's not just Sharon, the whole valley. All the money that's going to be lost, not just on property taxes, but these people hire people. They come in and they shop here, and their employees shop here. I mean, you know, it's more than a little distressing in the wildlands, the amount of problems that some of the ranchers are having with wolves, cougar, and having trouble with bear myself. Not because they don't have enough land, it's just that there's a certain compatibility. Nature balanced itself. But our government officials have decided that they know how to balance, and they will decide what lives and what dies. Well, it seems to me that our government officials have done a poor job. They have not in any way made our lives better. This county is going down and down, and the governor now has these bills passed where when our commissioners declare that they can't pay all the fees that they put on them, all this unfunded mandates, that they're going to come in and set up their own committee, and they will not only sell you any of your land that they want, but he's declared that he will put an income tax on all of us. So I say to you, private and public functions do not match, because the private function is there to make money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for us, we're not supposed to make money. We're supposed to help the people. Now, but private and public is what they continually want us to get into, to give our money to, and they decide which company will live and which company will die by giving our money to them. What we need is a very simple thing. When you take back control, take it by forcing them legally to tell you what's happening. Now, we pay for organizations to tell them what's going on. Their job is to know what's going on. When is the last time they told you about a problem before it happened so that you can get in there and push your other representatives to stop it? They don't. If they told us, if we forced them to tell us what's happening, we can muster the power to stop some of these people because of one simple reason: they want to get reelected. So there's an upside. Let's force them to tell us. And quite frankly, that is what the charter does. It legally binds them that they must follow and allow us to know and allow us to make decisions on the things that really matter and control our lives. Because this is a great county, and it's time we took it back that way. Force them to tell us, not what they have done to us, but what is happening before it is, and that's at the state level, the federal level, as well as the ordinances that they put on that kill businesses. And God bless, thank you.
A couple of things she brought to mind in the charter. It is very clear. Is a character. He had quite a bout with the federales a few years back. If you recall, it was front page news. I think it was in the Myrtle Point. I don't know if the Sentinel picked it up then. Anyway, if you remember the story where this senior guy was all of a sudden thrown to the ground, handcuffed, and hauled off by federal officials. This was Francis. Now, does this guy really look like he needs to be thrown to the ground and handcuffed? I mean, does he look like a big threat to humanity? I don't think so. He's kind of a teddy bear. Oh, I'm sorry. He's a macho man. I'm sorry. Forget the teddy bear. I didn't say you're a teddy bear, okay? Carrot's having a good time. Anyway, he may talk about mining. I don't really know. But I have to tell him this, Francis. Francis has a hat that he wears sometimes, and it's the brown one that comes down like this. And when you see Francis in that, the only thing that's missing is his little Jenny mule. I mean, if you want the old-time miner look, there he is with his hat. Just give him the Jenny mule and his little pig. I mean, it's a perfect rendition of Francis. Come on up, Francis.
What am I going to do with this?
No, just a little bit on the court system. Run into. I'm kind of stubborn. And basically, in our courts anymore, you don't even have the Bible in there to swear on, you know, right and wrong. Look what's happened to our country since about 1963. They want the Bible gone. I mean, they want Christians gone. They don't want anything that's right or wrong. They want a lie. And we see lots of it. Anyhow, with what I was doing, the first thing was don't use an attorney. He has to turn on you. His first allegiance is to the court and the judge. And you're paying the bill, but you're number 3 in line. It's kind of like the wolves are deciding what they're going to do with the sheep tonight. And when you what he'll do, he'll tell the court that, oh yes, my client understands. I didn't understand nothing in their court. And the judge, after they had me in jail for 6 days, I go in there, they put me with people that's getting 8 to 10 years and they're happy that's all they got. Well, I spend about 3 hours in the cells over at the courthouse with them. I don't think they're trying to intimidate me or nothing. I go into the courtroom and the judge says, Mr. Schrader, you don't seem to agree with us. Now, I thought that the judge was impartial. I wonder who the us were. It's everything that went on in there was the government says this, the government said that. Well, basically what I was fighting, probably some of you don't know, I work by myself. They expect me to follow the same safety regulations as a outfit that has people working for them. I don't know how to take care of myself. I've been there for 37 years and there's never been an accident claim. And at times I had people working out there. But they did everything they could to intimidate you to say, yes, I agree with you. And in this country, and our constitutional rights, they're being thrown away. And when if you start something like this with it, don't start it unless you're prepared to lose everything you own. Because it could come out that way. It's, you give up and you're going to be on their plate for them to do with you what they want to do with you. And get my notes here maybe. And use your unalienable right that God's given you under the Constitution. I went a little farther than that. I got churches together that was praying for me through this. And when I stood in that courtroom by myself, there wasn't no fear. That's not me in a place like that. But I got help. When I started this, I went to church. When I finished this, I know there's a God that takes care of me. Because the judge told me once there, says, I'll put you in jail until you change your mind. I mean, that's how stuff goes in there. It's to coerce you into agreeing with their system, because you're under English law, or law of the sea, and they have to get you to agree. And once you've agreed, that's the end. They'll do with you what they want to do. Anyhow, if you start something like this, get a hold of some people that know the Constitution, that understand our real law, not our administrative law. Because administrative law is just things that they come up with and then they shove at us and make us think that we have to obey. But basically, no matter what you're doing, and is if you got something you believe in, fight for it. Don't be halfway about it. Thank you.
Our go-to guy when you want a little energy brought into the room, when you want something different to happen, when you want people stood on their heads and shaken, and the change that falls out given to the poor. Is that what you do with the change? I don't think so. Anyway, we've got Rob Taylor. He's going to be talking about the Coos County Watchdog website. This is his website, and he's going to tell you what you can find on there and what you should be looking for. He's very active in politics. He's very active in Bandon. The counselors just sigh when he walks in the room. Oh, Mr. Taylor is here. I think the city councilors over at Coos Bay are shortly going to be saying, oh, Mr. Taylor and Mr. McCurgan are here. So, you know, he's very active. He's done a lot of good stuff for the community. I'm proud to call him friend. Rob?
How y'all doing out there? Feeling good? Is this mic on? Hello? So, what brings me here? Very much the same thing as you guys are here. I've got issues. I've got lots of issues. Whereas mine aren't personal issues. My issues come from dealing with everything you're talking about. You know, I was very active as a young man. I worked for a gentleman who was running for the district attorney. His name was Steve Schiff. Steve Schiff eventually went on to be a U.S. congressman, and I helped him become a congressman. He was a Republican congressman, and his claim to fame was he was going to release the files on the UFOs. So, you know, that tells you something. But it's a little different. That's all right. You know, I'm from New Mexico, and we got a few aliens out there. Of course, they're illegal aliens, but, you know, you got to deal with what you got. So, one of the things I did is I saw that there was a lot of things out there that we needed to get together on because we were all facing an accumulative, compounding problem that was being caused by what I call exterior pressure. People from Washington, D.C. who don't know even who we are or what we're about, and they have no clue what we're doing out here. And one of the things we talked about was the Bandon Marsh. Well, we formed a group. We got a non-profit group, and we were smart. We didn't put Tea Party anywhere near it. In fact, we call ourselves Coos County Today, and we call ourselves a free market environmentalist group. I'm sure the people back in Washington are going, what the hell's a free market environmentalist group? It's got free market and environmentalism? I'm confused. Well, that's what we did. So we were able to actually form a non-profit group where we're able to go out and educate people and inform people about what's really going on. And it gives us a lot more legitimacy than a lot of times just being a person who's on your own. And so, you know, with the Bandon Marsh, I actually started because of the urban renewal. I saw that Bandon was going to expand its urban renewal. Now, I don't know if you know, Bandon's about a town of 3,000 people. I went to a high school that had more people in it than Bandon does. Yeah, Sandia High School in Albuquerque. And I'll tell you what, they raised the debt to $12 million, and they pushed it out to the year 2033. Well, the average age of the city council is 72. I doubt any of them will even be around in 2033. But my kid will still be paying the bill, and I'm sure they'll be accruing more debt. So I said, we got to do something about this. So we started finding ways to attack these issues. One of the first things we did is I tried to run a referendum against the urban renewal, and it failed. Well, that's okay, I'm used to failure. Anyone who ever says that it's good to win, it's good to lose sometimes, because sometimes you learn more from your victories and you just get downright pissed off. You get angry about it. You know, people will say, oh, Rob, you're so passionate about these issues, and I'll tell them, no, I'm passionate about my wife. I'm passionate about pepperoni pizza. I'm frustrated with my government. So I created this website called Coos County Coos County Watchdog, and I started putting all the issues on it that we were having trouble with. So we had this problem with this marsh expansion. We went down to the county commissioners. We asked them to write a resolution against this marsh, and two of the commissioners, at that time it was Messerly and Cam Perry, well, they weren't too interested until they started to talk to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and realized they only care about fish and wildlife. Well, Cam and Fred are a little scaly, but they don't have fish or fins or feathers, so the Fish and Wildlife don't care about them. So they realized that, and they passed a resolution, and we got an advisory vote on the ballot. 80%, almost 80% of the people came out to vote on that, and we got 72% of the vote. We won. And just this last year, they put a suspension on that marsh. Now, I don't trust these guys, and I'm sure they're going to be back, so we're going to be putting another resolution on the ballot. We're going to go to the commissioners, we've already talked to a couple of them, and we're going to ask them to put a question on the ballot, or after they pass a resolution, and in the resolution, we're going to ask the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to evacuate the county after they replace those dikes that they took out. And we're going to have them turn that property back over to the county, and hopefully the county will turn it back into a farm. I don't care if they turn it into a Ford dealership, but anything's better than a mosquito pit, right, folks? Yeah. And see, when you start having these things happen, like this Bandit Marsh, you get what I call auxiliary laws that come in. They had this thing that they wanted to pass that's going around all this country. It's called the Dark Skies Initiative. Have you guys heard of this Dark Skies Initiative? Yeah, I'll tell you what, they wanted to tell me that I could only have a 40-watt bulb on my house. I mean, you know, I'm near 50, I can hardly see under anything under 60 watts, so 40 is ridiculous. And so I got tired of it. I went around, I collected signatures, and it was a special election because I specially made sure that it fell in a time period where the city would have to pay an extra $5,000 to run this election. I thought they needed to be punished for their, bad decisions. Well, I got out about, I would say 52% of the vote, which normally is about 29% of the turnout. And of that 52% turnout, we got 56% of that vote. We won. And I want to tell you something else. I thought this was all great last year, but just last week I had Oregon Public Broadcast call me. They wanted to find out why I did it and what were my reasons, because we seem to be the only city in the nation who has ever defeated that law. Can you believe that? That little liberal haven in Bandon, those latte-sipping, golf-playing liberal bastion right there? Well, I'll tell you, we defeated them. We defeated them. And we're going to win on this resolution where we're asking the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to leave. So I recommend that you go to my website, Coos County Watchdog, you sign yourself up so you can stay informed, and we're going to continue nailing on things like the Winter Lake Project. It's pretty much a done deal, but I can tell you right now the consequences of that will be felt for the next several generations, and we're going to hold their feet to the fire. We just talked to Pacific Legal Foundation, and because of the mosquito problem that they've caused in Bandon, we're going to be filing a class action lawsuit against the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That's right, we're going to make them pay for shouldn't have done. And when we get through with it, we're going to go after BLM. Then we're going to go after all the other agencies in the Department of Interior and the Department of Agriculture. And we've already set up meetings with them. They've got road closures that we want to fix. And we're not going to stop because, well, I'm a tenacious man and I know you people are just fed up with it. And I heard that bell, but I'm going to ignore it. Ask the City Council. Now, last time I went to the Coos Bay City Council, I went 30 seconds over and they had 2 cops behind me.
Approaching rapidly.
Approaching rapidly. I'll tell you what, I've never been arrested in Oregon. And so, I couldn't figure out why they thought I was such a dangerous threat. But I'll tell you what, we're not going to tolerate that no more. These people work for us. They represent us. And they're not doing that anymore. They're supposed to abide by the Constitution, the Oregon Constitution, and even their own ordinances they're ignoring. We're going to hold their feet to the fire. We're going to force them to do it. And I don't care if they like it or not. I'm not here to be liked. If I want to find a friend, I got 2 big, beautiful Akitas at home. Best friends in the world. And then if I want good neighbors, that's fine too, because fences make the best neighbors. So I don't have a problem with being obstinate, and like she says, every time I walk into a room, I get that sigh. I call it the collective crunch. I go, oh, he's here again. But you know what? It's great because now the City Council abandoned, before they pass any ordinances, they start talking to me about it. Hey, Robert, are you going to be filing a referendum on this? Well, let me think about it. So, you know, we got to get to that point where they're asking us what our opinion is. And to do that, we have to get active. So I hope you all stay active, and I thank you for your time and overtime. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ron.
We're going to be going to the raffle. Oh, no, we're not going to the raffles next. First, I wanted to make 2 comments on what he said. On the dark skies down in Bandon. If you want to hear how far over the edge these people really are. Not only were they worried about the plants and the animals and all of this because of the night light coming in, this aura of big city light, 3,000 people, how much light do you have? You know, but they were really concerned. But you know one of the things they were concerned about in Bandon that was being affected by these night lights being on? The rocks.
Yes.
The rocks in Bandon were being affected by this light. You left out one adjective, I think, for the Bandon people, and I won't touch it. On the urban renewal, it's a really hot topic. It was a very big topic. It was one of the 4 big topics when the charter was floating around last year. And in the charter, and God knows Ron has worked and worked and worked to get urban renewal under control, because they freeze the tax here and then they improve it and they take all that money and give it out to their whoever they like that week. You know, it ruins your tax base. It favors one company over another. And in the charter, I'm very happy to say, having our attorney worked with his attorney up in Salem, and there is a clause in there that says any time an urban renewal district comes up for, wants to expand, either they want to extend their time or extend their debt or extend their area, that it will go to a vote of the people. You see, we can't tell Bay what to do or Bandon what to do, but when you go around this little merry-go-round that's the urban renewal, well, one of the horses on the merry-go-round is Coos County. And the charter can address anything that has to do with Coos County, and so we did. When it comes around to where they have to say, because all these taxing districts have to say, oh yeah, that's okay, you do that. When it gets to the county part, that's when it goes to a vote of the people. And you decide whether or not you want this to go up or down. And the charter doesn't say you should vote for it or against it. It is completely silent as to how you should vote. The only thing the charter wants is for you to have the opportunity to vote. And trust me, when it passes in November, on the 4th, there's going to be a party, and a whole bunch of you are going to be there, and they're going to be changing their urban renewal habits.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have any comments? Oh, what we're at right now, we're at last minutes for speakers who want it. Do you have anything? No, you're not a speaker, Roger. Do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, one of the things, I'll be on Jim Bai's show, is that talking about urban renewal. We've got a big fight coming on in Coos Bay. We're getting ready to fund an Indian hotel and an Indian casino. And both the properties are sitting not only in an urban renewal area, but in an enterprise zone. So it's not even going to garner as any taxes. And then the taxes that it does give us is going to go right back into the urban renewal agency. And every project they build is about a 2-to-1 cost. Meaning that if they spend $10 million on it, it's going to cost them $30 million throughout time to maintain whatever project they build, just like the tourist center they just had. So you got to keep your eyes open on this, and the only way to do that is start attending these meetings. Take your Adderall and drink a lot of coffee and show up to these 5-hour-long, really depressing meetings. Stand up and say something to these people, because that's the only way you're going to get their respect.
Thank you, Rob. Wim?
Do I have a right to say a few words?
No, you do not, Roger. You're not one of the speakers.
At the risk of wearing out my welcome, I took well over 5 minutes to say my piece, but it's a challenge when you have a book that has about 300,000 words in it, and you want to compress it that much. And what I think I missed, or what I left out, was the biggest thing about economic development and all of the things, all of the government schemes that aim to produce economic development. Well, they don't produce economic development, but it's worse than that. They produce the opposite. And it hit me like a brick when I accumulated Oregon statistics from the Blue Book about what has happened to Coos County during the last 30 years. During that period, 3 decades we're talking about, all of Western Oregon prospered and grew. Now, I'm talking about population growth, which is an excellent indicator of how an economy is doing. Well, the only exception to that was Coos County, except for Bandon, but that's another story. That's before Bandon went crazy. Now, so we lost population here. Every place up and down the coast gained population, whether you're talking about Astoria, Newport, Brookings, Florence. As a result, real estate in this area, at least residential, probably commercial too, but at least residential values here in this area, in the Coos Bay area, is about 25% less than it would be in Florence or in Bandon, places like that. Well, that's a loss for all of us here.
Right.
And the other thing is that they've grown a sort of web, a sort of mafia of economic development in this area. And it has happened that people who wanted to expand their business simply went someplace else because, well, if you bypass the local economic development mafia, you're not going to get any place because these people all are busy justifying their own jobs. And if you don't go through them, they'll find ways to counteract you. And these things have happened, believe me. And then there are the other factors that have simply discouraged people from coming here. Now, one big factor in this you see throughout my book is that all the projects that these people have pushed and never came to fruition were nevertheless very threatening to people who might have been contemplating settling here. Because they were all big, nasty, and dirty, or dangerous. Now, they never happened. But all those recurring threats continuing through the years, they definitely kept people from settling here, and you can tell by those numbers. And then there are the physical obstacles, and this is one of my pet peeves, I got a lot of them, is the railroad that has been resurrected at an initial cost of $63 million of other people's money, but by my best estimate, it's going to take at least a couple of $100 million more to actually make it function properly. And what for? For 2 mills who did without it for 5 years. I'm sorry, that doesn't convince me. But the worst part is that all over the world, towns towns have benefited from redeveloping their old industrial, worn-out, dragged-down waterfronts. You go look at Newport, you go look at Florida, you go look at Astoria, you go to Portland. It works. It really does. It has worked all over the world. We can attract condominiums, maybe fancy yachts, all kinds of developments, little old towns like Bandon. I mean, it's not really all that old. I know that. It sort of weather-beaten, but it attracted a lot of people. Well, it can't happen here because the railroad acts like a noose around the waterfront, and you can't do a thing because if anybody ever comes along, and it has happened, say they want to build a condominium development, well, first you've got to shell out $350,000 for an official railroad crossing for a place that might see a train pass once a week, maybe. So all this stuff has been extremely counterproductive, and in a way, and now some of you may think that I'm exaggerating, but I'm really not, because it is akin to what happened and what held back development in the Soviet Union. Which finally the people there got tired of it and they overthrew it, got rid of that stupid system where the government was running everything and determining, oh yeah, we need industry here, we'll build factories there, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll control everything. And what was the result? Well, to a star in his eyes socialist, it was a wonderful thing, but if they ever went to visit there, they brought their own toilet paper. And this, in a nutshell, has been our problem here. The government has gotten way too involved in these things. And if only we would draw people to Coos Bay, like other places have, which that starts with tourism, by the way. Yes, yes. And then you always get these people. Oh, you can't make a living off of tourists. You can't make a living off of these tips that people leave. That's nothing. Well, it's a first impression, and some of those tourists are going to settle here. And from then on, we don't exactly know what is going to happen, but some of them are going to start businesses, just like some of the people who like Bandon started businesses, which actually have been very good for Bandon. And a lot more could happen here. It's got a huge potential. Thank you for your extra time.
You really should get the book. $35 gets you the book and gets you customers too. There is so much that has gone on over the years, and he covers 40 years of it. It's just unbelievable, and it is so sad. And as far as that railroad is concerned, it was only a couple of weeks ago, I think the new editor, who hasn't been here very long, maybe not an excuse, put in something about it. Wouldn't it be nice to see that as a passenger railroad? Well, I'll tell you, the youngest person in this room isn't going to live long enough to see that railroad as a passenger railroad. We're going to, are any of the other speakers want the last minute?
Okay, I'm going to just be real brief here real quick. I wanted to mention something that's a little deep. If you look back, everything that's going on around us in our country today, there's a reason. And that reason is because it's been set up that way to occur this way. Since, if you look back at September 11th, 1991, does anyone know about that date? September 11th, 1991 is when George Herbert Walker Bush introduced to the world the beginning of the New World Order. And I know this all sounds like conspiracy theories, but actually it's conspiracy fact. And every president since then has had a job to do that is right along